Welcome to another episode of Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers in law aren't necessarily monsters in law. And I'm joined by my lovely co hosts who happen to be my daughters in law. Hence, we're busting that myth. I think I shared that last week too. So maybe I need to come up with a more original something there. But anyway, I'm joined by Kelly, who's to the left of me.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I am married to Beth's oldest son, Alex, making me a daughter-in-law.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He's the one that did it. And Chelsea to the left of me.
Hi,
No, you're to the right of me. Sorry. Hello. Hello.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I'm married to Beth's middle son, Andrew.
There we go. Okay. So we are in holiday mode because we are fast approaching all of my favorite holidays. I think Halloween's already in the rear view mirror by the time this is aired, but I think Thanksgiving might be still front and center and Christmas. So we're going to talk about holiday stress today because it's a real thing. And we can be overcommitted. We can be overstimulated. We can overeat. I mean, there's a lot of things that go along with the holidays.
Yeah.
So we're just going to talk about holiday stress and maybe some ways of how we can de-stress and make it a more enjoyable holiday. And really or holidays, I should say. My message for mom today really just stems from overcommitting as a young mom and wife and saying yes to everything and just being exhausted by the time you're wrapping gifts. It's like, it's no longer fun.
Yeah.
And when the fun comes out of the holidays, I think that's when you really need to reassess. And also, too, I mean, I wasn't working, Mac was working, so I was really the one that was in charge of absolutely everything. So from decorating the house, which was a lot of fun, to buying the gifts, which was probably even more fun because I have this philosophy where it's one for me, one for you, two for me, one for you. And I developed that a long time ago. So, shopping was always like really fun. But it was just all those extra things because, when the boys were little, then you have to get the teachers' gifts and then you have their usually performances. And then, your schedule just gets like so busy and you're going in so many different directions. And then when you add on cookie exchanges with your friends and, holiday parties at work, and it can just be such a crazy time. So we're just going to take a little bit of a deep dive because, as I said, as a young mom, I would just overcommit. And when I learned the power of no, it kind of changed everything. So, but let's get into it and let's just, so I'll just share. So we have two foundational pieces. So we really do try, when we have topics like this, we do try to go to experts. So we have two foundational pieces and we'll have those linked here if you're watching on the YouTube channel. So 10 tips to reduce stress and take care of yourself at the holidays. And that's from UC Davis 2023. And then we have 7 tips to help with holiday stress. And that's from Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine. And also, we've touched on this topic many times over on the blog. And so we can actually even link up some blog posts about how to de-stress the holidays because we do want to enjoy it. We do want to have that time to spend with our families and spend with our friends, but not be like overloaded. So, but anyway, so those are our foundational pieces. But I mean, honestly, ladies, I mean, where do we even start with this? I mean, I'll just have a very generic question. I mean, have you felt stressed during the holidays ever?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I would say, definitely financial stress. I feel like when I was teaching dance and, just buying gifts and all that stuff. But I mean, even time commitments. I don't know. I mean,
I think
I have been, but not like, I wouldn't say overwhelmingly stressed, but I also, this is kind of, I'm just now married. I don't have kids yet. So, I think that will come, you know what I mean? As time progresses, like you said, with like the kids and buying gifts and, it'll get a little bit different as as the years go on.
I would just say, as a young mother and wife, that was probably when I felt the most stress, is because there was just so many additions.
Yeah.
I mean, we had, a church performance, we had the school performance, we had, Mac's holiday party, then we would host a party. I mean, it was just like, it was a lot. and everything was really, I felt everything was really on my shoulders.
Right.
So, but I mean, honestly, these days, but I also do think it's because I do say no. I mean, I do
Yeah.
know what the power of no is, and it's been a very freeing experience. It's like I don't have to say yes to every party.
Right.
I don't have to say yes to every, every invitation. I don't have to. I mean, I can just say no,
Yeah.
and pick and choose on those things that I really want to participate in, and then really enjoy that. But
Yeah.
but so when was the time that you were stressed during the holidays? Kelly?
I think a lot of my holiday stress comes mostly from like family obligations, like with having divorced parents. Especially when I became old enough to drive, and it was kind of not the scenario where my mom and dad were meeting halfway and dropping me and my sister off with one or the other. And when I was 16 and I could drive myself, it then was incumbent upon me to like take my sister and myself, to my dad's, or like try to coordinate and plan that. And and there was never like my dad's other family, my step siblings, are, that we had fun, and that was one thing. But there was always a little bit of a kind of a challenging familial relationships going on there. And so I always kind of had this kind of stressful feeling as a teenager and then as a young adult about having to kind of navigate my way through spending holidays with both of my families, because they were so, separate. That was always really challenging. And I think when I finally left California and moved to Alaska, and I felt like that distance was like the perfect way to say I can't come home for the holidays, I had this tremendous sense of kind of relief. Like there were certain parts of it that I missed. Of course you want to be with your family during the holidays, but at that point in my life, I felt like that was more for them than it was for me, because I was actually just kind of glad to like start my own holiday tradition maybe, and just sort of, live a more independent life. As harsh as that might sound, I think there is a point in a young person's life where you might go through that. Like maybe your job or your schooling keeps you from going home for the holiday, or, something. And so I think it's important to be able to like navigate that time as an independent person, and not maybe not participate in family traditions, but still be able to like get through it okay. But even, once I moved back to California and was able to like do holidays at home and stuff like that, I really kind of had to make it more about what I was comfortable and able to do without it being too stressful, because I was always the one traveling back home rather than people traveling to me, which it was always expensive. And it, I had to rent a car, say, or I had to make the plane trip, and those things can be challenging when, you can't afford to do those things, So I did have that time commitment and also financial stress. So I did feel that a lot as a young adult.
I feel like, well, the divorced parents thing, I felt when I was younger, I feel like the stress mainly, I felt like almost like a sense of guilt that my dad spent a lot of holidays alone. And I always felt bad that he did. So like, I feel like for me, it was almost like the stress and the guilt of, oh, well, I'm spending this holiday with my mom. And obviously we had a great time, and we would do, all of the typical traditional things that we would do. But there was definitely a level of guilt where you feel, but at the same time, like you mentioned, with my dad, it was always like, well, you have to come to me situation. And before I could drive, my mom, like I said, she worked in retail. So it was like, she couldn't drive me there. You know what I mean? So then it was a financial matter of like, well, how am I going to get there if you're not going to come and pick her up?
Right.
Type of thing. So, I think as an adult looking back, there was that level of guilt as a kid, but I don't think that maybe I should have felt that, because there also is like a responsibility as an adult to your child to just
That's right.
To make it happen.
to make it happen. You know what I mean? And even like you mentioned, once you moved away and I went up to New York, and even when I came back to Atlanta after I graduated from grad school, and visiting my dad, he never really came up and visited me a whole lot, which I think is kind of where our relationship started to
Mm-hmm.
like separate because like you mentioned, I mean, I was working 35 hours a week as a dance teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I was making no money. I barely had enough money to just pay my bills, yet alone buy a plane ticket down to Fort Myers or,
Mm-hmm.
even afford the gas to,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but also it's like a 10-hour drive, a
Mhm.
12-hour drive down there,
Yeah.
so,
Mm-hmm.
um,
That's a good point that you brought up, and I'm glad that both of you brought up the fact that it's very hard on children when their parents are divorced, and then the holidays come because then you're splitting time
Mhm.
with this parent or that
Yep.
parent. So I'm glad that you brought that up because that's a different kind of a stress
Yeah.
that that I faced. Which mine was just more of a time commitment and all
Mhm.
that. And I grew up. I mean, my parents were together, and Mac and I were together. But there are just so many people that are in the same situation, and I think it can be even challenging, even as you get into adulthood a little
Yeah.
bit. Don't you think?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Like my sister was really particular about this, even though she lived in the same town as my mom. When my sister got married and was having children and everything, it was very important to her to establish her own family traditions just within the family. And so
Right.
for her, that meant having Thanksgiving alone at their
Mhm.
house, or it meant having Christmas morning at home alone at their house, and then they might go see my mom and grandma
yeah.
later in the day, or maybe the night before, or maybe even the day after.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we all kind of adjust and do what we can to make it make the most sense for us. But I do think that the kind of going from here, like holidays for my family, it was always so much time spent driving from one parent's place
Point
to
A
the
to
other,
point B.
and it always just felt like so much. And when you're in school, you have a week off for the holiday, and so it always felt like my entire Christmas vacation from school was
In the
spent
car.
like in the car.
Yeah.
In the car.
Yeah, and then spending a couple days here and then getting back in the car and drive, So it always felt disjointed to me. I never
Yeah.
really had that sort of like cozy
Mm-hmm.
home for the holidays kind of feel. So I, not growing up with that, I can totally see why my sister wanted to like make that a really big point in her life with her kids. But for me, like we don't have kids, but Alex, having grown up with the traditions that he did, we're able to now kind of create that for ourselves, and it's a really nice,
Well,
nice way to
and
go.
we all live in close proximity. So all three of my
Mhm.
sons and their wives, my daughters-in-law, we all live in close proximity. So our traditions are really um, interlapping, and so it's really nice. I love that. I mean, I
Yeah,
love having my
so much
family
easier.
Yeah.
around and creating new traditions and new. I mean, kind of old, but new
Yeah.
as an extended family. But you did bring up one thing. I mean, Chelsea, you brought this up about guilt. I mean, did you feel guilt too, Kelly, over the holidays, or
Um,
splitting time, or was that a
no,
factor?
I didn't really, because my dad had a wife and she had 3 kids, so he had a house full there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the very beginning, before my dad got remarried, I may have felt guilty about my dad being alone, but he also had my paternal grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really felt guilty so much
Okay.
about that.
I think that's where, like, so even my mom obviously remarried 2 years ago
Mm-hmm.
and to my stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I mean, I told Andrew this all the time, but prior to her meeting Ryan and even me going out on dates or, there was always that level of guilt. So I would, like, if my mom was still alone,
Mm-hmm.
there would definitely, obviously, we would invite her to all of the events, but there would definitely still be that level of guilt, that she's by herself. And I think that's where my guilt came in, was because when I was growing up, my dad was by himself,
Mm-hmm.
to my knowledge. You
Right.
know what I mean? I'm sure that he went on dates and,
Right.
there were women around, but that I didn't know about, but nothing serious as to him getting married or having other children.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like he was alone,
Mm-hmm.
but so was my mom, because my
Right.
mom didn't really date for the longest of times.
Right.
She dated, but not like anyone serious.
Mm-hmm.
So there was always that guilt, and I was the only child.
Right.
So
So
like
you kind of have it
There's
going
a
was
lot of
both.
like
pressure.
both
Yeah.
there was
ways.
like
Yeah.
multiple
Mm-hmm.
levels there that as the
Mm-hmm.
only child, you know,
Absolutely.
you start to feel like the weight of the world
Right. It's on your
is
shoulders.
on your shoulders. Even if, I mean, I'm sure
I
my
get
mom
that.
and my dad never intended me to
No.
feel that way
But
at all,
that's
but
what
you do,
children
you
do. I
know?
mean,
Natural feeling.
Yeah.
it's very natural, and I'm really glad that you brought that up
Yeah.
because I do think a lot of people are facing that, or maybe they're a family that has just separated,
Yeah.
so maybe the mom, the dad are feeling also guilt
Mm-hmm.
with,
Yeah.
splitting time up, or maybe they're even fighting. I mean, there's lots of different, how breakups happen. There's lots of different scenarios
Yeah.
that occur. So I mean, I'm glad that both of you brought that up because it's not just, as I said, it's not just the stress of having way too much, or too many commitments in your schedule. There's other types of stress during the holidays. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that because I do know, I mean, and you talked about this financial stress, when you were teaching dance and you weren't making a big salary.
Yeah.
And you still want to show up for everybody with gifts. So, but that can be a very stressful situation.
It was, yeah. And I mean, so kind of how I went about it was I always did I like made a gift for my mom, but it was always something that, that I knew that she would be able to like hang up or so like I would actually like make her there was several years where I would take a pair of old point shoes
Mm-hmm.
and I would rhinestone the entire point shoe,
Mhm.
like both of them.
Mhm.
And then I would put them in a, what's the box?
shadow box?
A shadow box.
Mhm.
Thank you. So I'd put them in a shadow box and then I would, do different designs like in the
Mhm.
background of it.
Mm-hmm.
And she still like has them and hangs them to this
Yeah.
day.
That's
Yeah.
super cute.
just,
That's
like,
very
yes,
thoughtful.
yeah.
Things like that where it's like I
Mhm.
already had the point shoes. Really,
Mhm.
all I had to get was the shadow box.
Mhm.
Hobby Lobby does 50% off on
I know,
those
all the
Yeah.
time.
every once in a
Every
while.
day. Why don't they just,
You know,
I never understood.
Use 6,000 and some rhinestones and then call it a day.
Yeah.
But
That's
she
cute.
always liked those kind of gifts
Mhm.
anyways, and I feel like I always liked
Mhm.
giving
Heartfelt.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very special. I
I would
mean,
imagine.
well, when the boys were younger, they would always have a classroom
Handmade gift, yeah.
project where it would be a handmade gift, and I
Yeah.
still have many of them. And I mean, sitting out, and I have many of them packed away.
Yeah.
Actually, I was just really just thinking, I haven't gone through several of my boxes downstairs since I've moved into this
wow.
house, which is like 9 years. I was just thinking about that the other day. It's like, I
Yeah.
think I need to kind of go through
Yeah.
and see what I have. But
Yeah.
those are the most special gifts of all.
I think from a kid to a
Mhm.
parent, those have to be I
Mhm.
would imagine anyway, that those are the most like
Mhm.
Yeah.
important, heartfelt, and because you can just imagine your kid making this for you and being
Mhm.
thoughtful about it. And it's,
Well, they were always so proud
Yeah.
to, oh,
Yeah.
it's
you
also
know.
like a perfect little
Mhm.
keepsake or snapshot
Mhm.
from them at that point in their life,
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
I always had a
Like
good,
it.
like a fun time determining like what I was going to do for her gift that year because I feel like I always had to like one up my gift from the year
Uh-huh.
prior and
Uh-huh.
she always knew that I was going to like make her something. So like every year it would be a little bit different. And I remember one year I had a friend that had just gotten into photography. And so she was like, oh, well, I really want to take pictures of a dancer. Like I'll take pictures of you for free.
Uh-huh.
So she did like dance pictures of me in like downtown Marietta and
Mhm.
like they turned out really cool. And then I was able to like get all of these cool frames and my mom still has them
Uh-huh.
to this day where she like has
Mhm.
a collage,
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
So
It is.
But like,
yeah.
I think handmade gifts are really,
Mhm.
I think the only thing that you run into with setting about to do handmade gifts is like you might save money, but you also have to weigh that with the time commitment that it's going
Mhm.
to take you to craft
Right.
those
True.
gifts, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
So I think it's just you kind of have to look at like
Which is best.
what your situation is over the
Yeah.
coming weeks and how many people do you need to gift and all of that. Food gifts
That's
are
true.
always kind of fun,
Yeah.
baking gifts and
Always
things like
love
that.
food gifts,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and actually that's one of the things that I send to all of you. It's usually Omaha steaks. I guess I made a
Oh,
big
yeah.
mistake last year, and they were from Kansas City. I don't know how that happened. I think they
so-
snuck up on my screen at the last minute.
Whatever. I think you had like, there was a lot of sides in ours. And then
Mhm.
whenever it showed up,
Mhm.
Andrew, of course, he only eats meat, this
Right.
man.
Mhm.
So he sees the sides. He's like, what are
Uh-huh.
all these sides?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I
know.
don't know.
I think it was because they did. Kelly's the one that pointed out. I didn't even realize it. I was really thinking all along it was from Omaha Steaks, but I kept getting Kansas City steaks in my popping up on my email. I'm like, why am I getting that? Because I grew up in Omaha, so Omaha steaks is definitely a go-to. So
One that you
that's
use.
an easy way.
Yeah.
But I think it's also thoughtful because I'm like, thinking it makes people's lives easier too to have a meal on hand
Yeah.
Yeah.
during the holidays. So,
Mhm.
so for me, it's kind of like a win-win,
Yeah.
I will say, coming
win-win-win.
from a former dance teacher, and just teacher
Mhm.
background, stop giving candles. We don't want them.
No more candles.
So if you're buying your child's teacher a
Uh-huh.
candle,
Uh-huh.
just don't.
Don't do that.
We don't want them. Oh my God. My mom and me had like a
That's
candle
funny.
closet. We had a
Yeah.
whole, and then we would just re-gift them because
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'm
actually,
like,
that's the best thing
Yeah.
to do with that.
Yeah,
kind of
something
stuff.
like that.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's another way to kind of like reduce financial stress and maybe even the stress of having to think about what to get or
Uh-huh.
something is, you know, kind of over the year collecting,
Mhm.
little bits and pieces of this or that, or you get a gift from someone and think immediately like, oh, I can regift this,
Mhm.
and you just tuck it away in
Right.
the closet
but it's
and
like then you
wait.
feel bad. But I will say the
No.
best gifts that I actually had a really thoughtful gift from a class.
Mhm.
I think there was like 10 or 12 students that were in this class. There was like a 3 to 4 year old class. All the moms got together
Mhm.
and they were like, let's all put in like $10. So, 12 of them each put in $10 and they got me a really nice gift card to Lululemon, which
Oh,
very
was
that's
so
thoughtful.
very
nice.
good.
And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yes.
if,
It's helpful.
the whole class, like if you have that
Yes.
one mom and then it's $10,
Yes.
you're spending probably more on the candle and the card,
Right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah.
That's very clever. Well, when the boys were little, I always did homemade gifts for their teachers. So one of my favorites was a bean soup.
Mm-hmm.
So it had like, I don't know, like 5 different beans. So I would get all the ingredients together for them because we lived in Minnesota for many years and in colder climates. So I thought it was really a great soup to have,
Mm-hmm.
easy to make. So then I would also, print out the
oh, you just
recipe.
put it in like a jar and then,
Yeah. And so I put the
oh,
beans
okay.
in different jars and then, so I'd have it in a nice little gift basket and then I'd
Mhm.
have the recipe printed up.
That's
So then it
cute.
was like an easy meal for them. It was, all they had to do
Mhm.
was
Oh,
throw
yeah.
everything together.
No, that's
And
super
it seemed to
cute.
be pretty popular. They seemed to be very thankful for that,
Yeah.
but so that just became my go-to gift. So,
I
Food
just,
gifts are great.
when
Yeah.
so I do agree food gifts are great.
Mhm.
I will never forget the story.
Uh-huh.
So my mom, I told you she used to work at Publix
Yeah.
and she was in the front office one day and it was around Christmas time and people would just like randomly bring in cookies or different,
Mhm.
kind of Christmas things. Well, someone from her, you know, Publix location had brought in Buckeye balls, which are basically the peanut butter balls
Mhm.
coated in the chocolate.
Mhm.
And I
Yummy.
guess she was sitting down next to one of her colleagues who had just eaten like 3 of the Buckeye balls. And my mom went to go and pick up one of the Buckeye balls. And she goes, oh my God. And her colleague was like, what? And she was like, are you seeing this? There was cat hairs in like a lot of cat hairs in all of the Buckeye balls.
Mhm.
And ever since then, my mom was like, anytime a child brings me a
Uh-huh.
food gift,
She
I will
checks
not
it
eat
out.
it.
Oh,
No,
she won't eat
she
it?
won't
She
eat
just
it.
won't eat it.
And honestly, when a kid would bring me a food gift, it would depend on who the child was,
Mhm.
on whether or not I would eat it. Like if I knew like the
Mhm.
family, I'd be like, oh, okay. But if not,
Mhm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, mine was you could assemble. I assembled all
No,
the
yours
ingredients.
was
Yeah.
more like
And then, yes. And then
yours was less of a
you did.
baking.
Yeah.
Big
You
thing.
did
But
all
yeah,
all the
I always
work.
like the idea of like infused olive oils or
Mhm.
something like
I love
yeah.
those things. I
That's
essential
what
do.
I've
oils
gotten,
or
my olive oil store.
lemon.
Yes. I
but
love
but
those
making
gifts.
them. I'm talking about like making those and
Mhm.
not actually buying them, but
Mhm.
making a
Oh,
batch of
Mhm.
them as
yeah.
a homemade food gift.
Right.
Limoncello is another
Yeah.
easy one to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Um,
see, I both trust,
Mm-hmm.
y'all's kitchens. It's
Right.
just,
I
yeah.
know.
you
Well,
just don't
yeah.
know.
I know. That's
You don't know
yeah.
what you don't know.
I mean, all of us
know.
with animals worry about hair being in the,
I
fur
know.
being in the food.
Okay. Well, we've talked a little bit about guilt over the holidays and financial stress is definitely something that we have to factor into because we can
Mhm.
get overextended with, again, too many parties and, too many functions to attend and then the gifts and all of that. And we will go at the very end of this segment, we will go over 7 tips to help with holiday stress. But um, I do want to address loss of a loved one because we have experienced that in our home. And when Mr. Style died, and this will be my 6th Christmas without him.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. But that very first holiday hits home. It really does. And so there definitely needs to be some coping mechanisms in place. And there again, we'll, over here on YouTube, we'll add some of the blog posts because we have talked about this extensively. And honestly, from my very first Christmas without him, because that I think the firsts are always the hardest when you have lost a loved one and especially your spouse. But that can be also very, that can just bring a sadness or cast a sadness on your family festivities. So have you experienced, or I mean, do you have any like thoughts about that? How to cope with that?
Sure. I mean, I think, I mean, not having lost a spouse necessarily, but certainly when my grandparents have passed, especially because they held such a kind of central part in hosting a lot of our family holiday get-togethers. Without them kind of helming the stage, as it were, for the holidays and stuff, you know, then everything changes. It's like, okay, well, who's hosting? Who's, you know, so you kind of have to, I think personally, like having everybody, having that person in mind and having everybody in the family who typically is going to get together for the thing, you know, honoring that loved one, like not necessarily eschewing like a whole family tradition thing, but changing things up so that they accommodate the new situation, but still honoring that person. Like in a podcast recently about holiday traditions, I talked about my grandmother's Thanksgiving signature tablecloth, like kind of, you know, trying to maybe either keep that alive or start it over again in a new way, but honoring them with some aspects of that, but also taking care of yourself in the sense of like, I'm going to honor that loved one. I realize that I can never replicate exactly what the holiday was like with them because now they're gone. So what are some new things that we can do to like start new memories while still honoring the person who's not here? I think that that's an important part of it.
For sure.
Because I think trying to just recreate is always going to make you feel like there's something missing, right? So there has to be, I feel like there should, or maybe try this. I'm not trying to prescribe anything here, but I think trying to come up with some new and interesting family tradition that doesn't take the place of the person that's gone, but helps to start make a new way forward for
right.
Yeah.
So
I think that's important.
Right. So you're not as sad. Now that I'm 5 years into this journey, or 5 years later, I do have some experience that I can share, and I think that the firsts are always the hardest. And so I think you just have to give yourself grace and space. And I've said that many times with grief. You just have to take little baby steps. And the first one is going to be the roughest and the one where it will be the freshest with your grief. So there again, just be kind to yourself. Self-care is really good. And that could be as simple as going off to a spa or a mani-pedi, or you know, maybe even your family, you know, will take you out, you know, you know, something to not have you just be sitting at home, you know, dwelling on what you've lost, but you know, but what you still have. So but they're just little baby steps that you can take. But a loss of a loved one is very real for some people, and so just know that. I mean, it really is a cliche, but it really is true. Time does heal a lot of wounds. They don't necessarily go away, but you become a little bit better with each and every holiday. But I like what you brought up, Kelly, of instituting something that honors the memory of that lost one.
Yeah.
And that is something that we haven't done. But it's actually kind of been in the back of my mind. So
well, it's been in the back of my mind too.
It's never too late to do that. So I think we could start to do that.
And one of the things, like I remember my very first Christmas here, and this seemed like something that Mac sort of was. It was, I don't know if it was his idea or he was the one that was just excited about doing it, but coming up with a poem about a different person, right? So it would kind of be like. Each person would either be assigned a person or it'd be drawn out of a hat and you had to write a poem about that person. And then we would share those poems. And that first year I got Mac. So that was actually really fun to like spend time thinking about him and try, you know, and I had never even met him.
I know. And you, and you had him.
Yeah. And I had him and I hadn't even met him, but I remember the weeks leading up to coming here and I had spent time, you know, thinking about him, and we had phone, you know, like FaceTime conversations. So I did know something about him. And then of course, Alex gave me plenty of information, but coming up with a poem to then share about him, that was like a really sweet,
it was cute
and fun.
We should actually reinstitute those poems, because we used to do that with our white elephant, but then when it expanded, then we kind of thought that it might be too challenging, but maybe it's not.
Maybe it could be a haiku instead of a poem, so that it's only just a few lines.
No.
Well, haikus are easy. It's like, you know, syllables.
Maybe, because aren't you supposed to have like five?
It's 5-7-5.
Is it 5-7-5?
And it's syllables, so it's a very short poem rather than a, you know.
Well, that's true. Okay, all right. Then I'll maybe I'll retract that. I don't know. It seems like it's because we are talking about we're talking about de-stressing over the holidays, not stressing over it. Right. So okay, so let me just ask this question: have either one of you spent a holiday all by yourself? Because I can say I have not. I have never spent a holiday on my own. So I may have been sad that I've lost Mac, or you know that or I was sad that my dad was no longer with us, or my mom, you know, things like that. But I've never spent a holiday by myself. So have either one of you done that?
I don't think I have. I think, like I said, I did one Thanksgiving up in New York with my NYU friends.
So you had a Friendsgiving.
So we had a Friendsgiving because we all stayed up there, just because we didn't really get that much. We didn't have like a whole week off. I think we just had the Thursday through the weekend, and you know, flying. We all lived in the South, and so flying back home, it was just kind of like, well, we're gonna fly back home for Christmas. But I mean, I don't think I've ever spent a holiday by myself.
I have. I've had one holiday that was one Christmas that was completely by myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I didn't. I cannot say that I was upset about it. Like,
really?
Yeah, like it didn't bother me that much.
Okay.
But I think that stems more from just personal experience and not having as strong of a connection to Christmas as maybe a lot of other people do.
Yeah.
So it didn't really bother me. If I sat around and thought about it, I'm sure I could make myself upset. But I just was like, you know, call my family on the phone, wish them all a happy, you know, Christmas.
Yeah.
And I got phone calls from my family too. Like, you know, so there was a lot of phone conversations like, oh yeah, we wish you were here, blah, blah, blah. And so there's still, you know, there's some camaraderie and love there. Yeah. I wasn't, but like physically alone. Yes. Emotionally alone. No, I guess I could say.
Well, did you do anything special, or did you just stay home and you're happy to stay home?
You know what? I think I might have gone to the movies.
She ordered Chinese food.
Yeah, I know, right?
I would have ordered Chinese food.
Thank God for Chinese and movie theaters.
I might have just eaten cheese and crackers, which is my usual, or frozen pizza. But no, I might have gone to the movies. I can't totally remember, but I do remember not feeling like it was a hardship personally. But I do understand how it 100% is and can be for a lot of people.
Well, and as I said, I may be overblowing the whole situation, but when I think about people that are all by themselves, I mean, my heart really just goes out to them. And I have had, because I do have a social media account, and I do have readers write in that, oh gosh, you know, I'm so blessed, I'm so lucky to have family to spend it with, and that they don't. And so then that always makes me think about those people. And honestly, I mean, one thing that we could do is be thoughtful about who might be spending the holidays alone and actually invite them. I mean, if they're...
Well, that's what I was just going to say, actually. So like, I don't think that you're overblowing that at all, because I think that there's each and every one of us as humans have a different life experience regarding and centered around holidays or whatever, right? So I think if you personally feel sad for people that don't have family for the holidays and they might not feel sad about it, I think it's still nice though to have that empathy so that you can either reach out to that person And maybe if you don't even know any of those folks, like personally or whatever,
Mhm.
and you do have time to commit, I think that it it might seem like a stress inducer, but I actually think that volunteering during the holidays
Mhm.
at an organization that either serves meals for
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
people who need them or working at
Mhm.
a food pantry. My grandma did this actually a lot. She worked at a food pantry where, they had boxes of Thanksgiving dinners
Mhm.
that they would give
Mm-hmm.
out to less fortunate
Mhm.
families. And she always felt very buoyed by that,
Mhm.
especially after my grandfather died. Like
Mhm.
it made her feel like she was contributing
Mm-hmm.
in a way that was different than when he was alive, but also that like she felt active and felt, like it might have been a time commitment, but it was one of those things that the
Mm-hmm.
offset of how good it made her feel to do that was
Mhm.
Yeah,
was a good thing
Mhm.
for the
for
I
sure.
like that
holidays.
because I do think that one of the ways that we can manage our own stress, because when we're feeling stressful, it's usually we're very internal and what's going
Mm-hmm.
on in our
Mm-hmm.
own world. So when we think about other people, I think it's almost kind of a release, and I
Yeah.
think it's also good for us to think about other people at the
Mm-hmm.
holiday time because it isn't just about us and
Right.
what we're committed to and things like that.
Yeah, and
So,
if you get yourself out of your own brain for
hmm
a little bit,
I
I mean,
know
that can actually be a
it's
huge stress
really good.
reliever. And it
Yeah.
actually, I
Hmm
think there's endorphins that come
hmm
from being able to be in that kind of to have that kind of
Mm-hmm.
experience that can help you sort of feel a lot more excited,
hmm
motivated, and inspired by the holiday
hmm
season. So I think that those are all
hmm
Mm-hmm.
important things,
I
For
like
sure.
that.
especially if you're feeling lonely.
Yes, exactly. And that's also tip not just for us to think about giving back to our communities, but if you are all by yourself, I think that's a wonderful way to participate in the
Mm-hmm.
holidays is by
Hmm.
volunteering at a
And you feel
shelter
more
or
part of your
Mhm.
community too,
Yeah.
Yes,
right?
you really do. So I think that that's really good. Well, that's kind of an easy segue into tips on handling our stress. So and so we're going to take a look at that article from Northwestern Feinberg Hospital, and they have 7 tips.
Hmm.
And the first one really kicks off, and I love this because, and it really just stems from when we internalize everything at Christmas time, our expectations can get a little bit skewed.
Yeah.
So, one of their first tips is be realistic with yourself
Hmm.
and others, which is about expectations.
Yeah.
So, you may be disappointed, and I've heard this. I was never disappointed with any Christmas gifts, but I mean, I have to tell a couple of funny stories about the boys when they were little because they were disappointed, and but I've known friends that were like completely disappointed with the gifts that they received from their husband or I that that's that's just not in my wheelhouse. I'm always just really thrilled to get whatever
Mm-hmm.
gift that I give because for me it really is the thought that counts.
Right.
But I will share funny stories because when the boys were little and of course these were always gifts like, from my mom, it was from a relative. It wasn't like, from
Mm-hmm.
mom and dad. And they would be like, trying to be because they were taught to be very appreciative of their gift, but sometimes it didn't come out. So they'd be like completely deflated with this gift because maybe it was a book or whatever. And they're like, oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And then they're supposed to like give a hug or, oh, thank you. Well,
Yeah. I
it was
know.
kind of, I mean, it was kind of cute in one way, but it was also like, I mean, as
You
a
little
I
mother,
feel
shit.
like every
yeah, you
kid
little
goes through that.
shitheads. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Oh,
They
they
really
do. My
do.
grandma,
Oh,
my
thank
grandma
you.
was a depression era, and so her Christmas gifts to us were always clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid, I
Huh?
did not want
That's
clothes.
the worst.
I wanted Barbies, and if you were going to
Yeah.
buy me clothes, I wanted clothes for my Barbie.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But she always gave us clothes, and I remember being such a little shit and
Mhm.
opening I knew the box because they were rectangular from JCPenney.
Yeah.
But it was always the clothes that you didn't want either.
They were
Like
it
not
was practical clothing.
yeah, like for
Mhm.
me, like when I got into clothes, it was like, oh, limited too,
Huh?
but then
Yeah.
my Nana would always get me, or she'd like make me something, and
Right.
I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to.
Yeah, you're kind of like, thank you,
No,
like
it
boys.
was I mean my grandma tried. Like
They did.
she really
Yes.
tried, but
They did.
I think the ungratefulness of
Yes.
kids is just par for the course.
Yes.
It is.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's why, I mean, I'll just go back to this tip because it says very clearly here, set realistic goals and expectations.
Mhm.
And also too, not everything has to be picture perfect. And I think And especially in our social media world where everything looks so perfect and everybody else is doing it so well, just remember that it is not. Those are curated
Yeah.
posts, those are
Yeah.
curated, reels, and no holiday is perfect. And so just have very realistic expectations with yourself and then, with others too.
Well,
So
also, not every year has to be a gift giving year. Like
yeah,
last year, me and Andrew were like, we're not going to
yeah,
get gifts for each other
you had the
because
wedding.
we were paying,
Uh-huh.
out the wazoo for
I
a
know.
wedding. So it was like, okay, we're not,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you said, like, let's be clear,
Yes.
I'm not expecting anything from you. You're not expecting
Exactly.
anything from me.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
So expectations, that's very important. And then also too, we didn't really touch on this, but it can be very stressful because we are faced with more eating opportunities, I should say. So whether you're getting a food gift or, whether you're going out to a holiday party or maybe it's a cookie exchange. So we can be overindulging in maybe it's overindulging in alcohol or maybe it's overindulging in sugar,
it's always the alcohol on
right?
the
Well,
But my first Christmas Eve with them, it was like bottomless, dirty gin martinis.
I know.
Dirty gin martinis,
Well,
bottomless.
who was
That was
making
y'all's
those?
problem.
Andrew.
That was Andrew. Well, I didn't have any of.
He just kept.
He makes the worst martinis to begin with. So anyway, hello. I didn't have any of those, but
Oh,
Did not either.
but I actually make a very good dirty gin martini. So if
felt
you,
terrible that Christmas morning.
I know. Everybody was passed out. I think we had a talk after that, or I had a talk with the boys that maybe we perhaps should be evaluating our alcohol consumption. When I saw everybody passed out, over here and over here, it's like, okay, I think we need to rein this in. But anyway, so the next tip really is keep your healthy habits. So if you have perhaps overdone it with alcohol one night, then I think we just need to be very mindful, and we need to understand that puts a lot of stress on our bodies. Or if we've had one too many Christmas cookies or whatever it is, we really just need to remember to try and keep a very healthy routine. So keep your exercise regime going. I mean, that's very important to me. I really do. Like, I just came back from vacation and had, too many sweets over there, but I'm not eating sweets now. I mean, I think it's really fine to go overboard sometimes, but you have to be thoughtful about that and rein yourself back in and get your healthy habits back in place. So, so I'm on board with that. And then
I think the working out or exercise is a big one because I think it's really easy to say, I've got so much to do today. I'm just not going to go on the treadmill or walk around the block or do whatever. It's a really easy out for
it is.
the
But you'll feel so much better if you actually prioritize that. And that's actually self-care during the holidays. And then too, and we can't forget this at all, but a good night's sleep is so important.
Yeah.
So just be thoughtful about that. Go to bed at your regular time and wake up at your regular time and really keep that in place too, because sleep is so important to our overall health. So, so the next tip on this list is try to go with the flow. And so they are just talking about, so the holidays are a time when not everything may be under your control, right? And so if you are a type A or maybe you're OCD or a little bit of a control freak, I think this is a time when you really have to be thoughtful that you don't have everything under control, and it's okay. So, so just go with the flow. So I did like that because I think you can just start to feel very overwhelmed and very out of control if you don't just, it's just like, well, whatever.
That really ties into the setting realistic expectations.
Yes, it really, really does. And then also too, I love this one. So do less. And we briefly touched on this at the beginning, but that's the power of no. You don't have to participate in every single thing that comes your way.
Right.
So you can do less, and you're not a Grinch, and don't let anybody think that, that you are a Grinch because you're not doing this or you're not doing that. So you can prioritize what you want to participate in. And then also we need to be prioritizing our mental health too, our mental, and then which ties back to exercising too. So do both of those. And then we briefly touched on this next tip, which is reaching out. And that really is, and especially if those people that don't have any friends or family, I think it's really important to reach out to them, make sure that they're doing well, or maybe they want to get together. So because loneliness, and especially over the holidays, and depression, I mean, they spike.
Yeah,
they do. And that's why we have segments like this where we're talking about stress during the holidays, and tips to overcome that. But so if it's within our power, reach out to that person.
Yeah.
And make sure that they are doing okay, and that they're not lonely, and that they're not depressed. So, and then here's another good reminder, because this is really just is about exercise. But tip number 6 is get up and get moving, because and as you were saying, Kelly, it's so easy just to say, no, I'm not going to work out today because I have so many other things to do. But I think if we really understand the power of just even a simple walk around the block, and how it clears our head, and it just gets us up and moving. So don't neglect your exercise routine, and just don't neglect those little things that you can add, like a walk or.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that they also talk about, not only in this article, but the other one too, the 10 tips from the other article, is the something that I think we kind of take for granted until we're actually in it, is the lack of sunlight.
Yes.
So the time change, and just having shorter days means that we are probably having less time in natural sunlight. So I think one of the tips here about get up and get moving is to actually try to spend some time in the actual sun. Like go outside, take a walk, be in daylight, and it helps to kind of offset the kind of short days and long dark like long periods of darkness.
That's a really, really good point. And then the last tip with this article is make small adjustments. So it's and they just are talking about the holiday season can seem full of big changes. So focus on the little things that you can do, that you do have control over, and that will help you, kind of like decompress. So I'm not sure if that title really makes sense, make small adjustments, but it's really just really talking about focusing on small things that you can do.
Well, yeah, and it's also just talking about like trying to gravitate toward healthier habits and investing in yourself, which is something that people, that can be a big adjustment for a lot of people, I think, especially at the holiday time.
Right, because we're not necessarily thinking about self-care, but we can't neglect that at the holiday time.
Yeah.
So
even if it's like binge watching a show or reading a book, or
just something that you
doing something that feels like, oh God, I'm being so lazy right now, but actually just let yourself do that for a little bit and not feel guilty about it.
That's right. I agree. Okay, ladies. Well, that wraps it up with this segment, and we are going to take a short break, and we will be back with New and Noteworthy. And we're back with my favorite segment, and I say this every week because it really is my favorite segment, because it's just the girls just sharing just a little bit of what maybe it's a TV show. I'm looking at you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Or it could be a product. I have a lot of products. Or I don't know. What do you have? I'm going to kick it off with you, Chelsea. So what do you have this week?
I have a TV show.
TV.
I did TV.
Okay, well, you can join Kelly and start a TV podcast.
I know. So I did Outerbanks season 4. Part 1 is the only part that came out on Netflix. And I've watched all of the seasons prior to this season. They broke it up. I feel like Netflix keeps doing that, where they'll do part 1 and part 2.
They release like 5 or 7 or whatever.
Marketing ploy.
Yeah. Well, this one, it's kind of like about angsty teens and treasure hunting. And it kind of reminds me of like, what's that movie? It's like National Treasure.
With Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. So kind of like that in show form, but with teenagers. And so basically in each season, they're looking for some sort of treasure. Someone's also looking for the treasure. They're out to get them. Competition. Yeah. And so they actually, I feel like last season kind of dragged. And this season, I feel like they're actually doing a better job. And I was actually kind of cliffhanger on the last episode of part 1. So I'm excited for part 2 to come out. I don't think it comes out until November sometime, though.
Okay.
I have a friend who's actually in that show.
Oh, really?
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, an old friend.
Which character?
I've not seen the show, so I don't know, but I think he plays maybe the biological dad of a character named JJ or something.
Oh,
maybe?
the dad of, oh, wow.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the show.
Okay.
That is
yeah.
shocking that you have not seen the show. You see all the shows.
I know, but I don't like teen shows or
Oh, they're
shows that
just
center
not-
around teens that
yeah.
don't really hit my radar
Okay.
screen.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I didn't really. I mean, I'll have to check it out. 'cause
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
heard good things about it.
Yeah,
So.
you should check it out.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so what do you have this week?
I also have a TV show that's on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
So this show's been around for a while, Godless. It came out in 2017, and it stars Michelle Dockery, who we might remember as Lady Mary from Downton Abbey.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Daniels is in it, Scoot McNairy, who you might not know him by name, but you'd recognize his face.
Okay.
And Sam Waterston and Kim Coates, who I actually really love because he was in Sons of Anarchy.
Okay.
But it's a really great period piece. I mean, it's beautifully shot. The music is really wonderfully done. The acting is gorgeous. Every episode moves. I mean, it really has good pacing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really fun show, and it's a Western. And I will say that it might be a Western that changes your mind about Westerns. Because it's just really beautifully well done. Like, fantastic show. And the premise is really cool.
Okay.
So
But it's a limited series, so just one
That's right.
season. Okay.
that's right.
All right. Thank you. So, since we are talking about the holidays, and this would actually be a good gift, but a better gift for yourself, because I love flowers. I just think they're just something that brightens my mood, and I love to go off to Trader Joe's and just get some, hydrangeas or whatever they have for sale. They almost always have
Their
hydrangeas.
flowers are always
and,
so great.
they have
Yeah.
great flowers. But anyway, I do like just having beautiful bouquets too. So UrbanStems is a great floral delivery service, and I've used them several times, and I really love their
Yeah.
bouquets. So, I mean, it's so easy because all you have to do is you can go online, you can order them, you can have them delivered to whomever you want to. But I say deliver some to yourself while you're at it. So, because I just think that flowers are just something very, very special. And especially during the holiday time too.
Yeah, I like UrbanStems.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I'm thinking of the same company, I think they started in California in the Bay Area, and I feel like when they started, I was working at Apple, and one of my coworkers was friends with the girl that started the company.
Oh, really?
And so because they were just starting out, she would bring us like bouquets to the office, and
that's
we
cool.
would kind of showcase them and kind of because. Of course, from their perspective, they're like, "Hey," and then people will be like, "Those are beautiful. Where did you get them?"
Right.
Oh, UrbanStems. Yeah.
Right.
If it's the same company I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
But,
pretty cool.
I
If
mean,
that
I
is.
have shopped them before, and their
Uh-huh.
bouquets are always very
They're
modern.
beautiful. They
Yeah.
really are. And they have, and actually, I was just online looking. And so when we're filming this, it's before Halloween. So they had Halloween
Oh, fun.
bouquets, and
Yeah.
some of them are like, kind of like dead flowers.
Yeah.
It was like so cool. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is very clever. So I can't wait to see what their Christmas, Thanksgiving and Christmas bouquets look like.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I love it.
Yeah. All right, ladies. Well, that wraps up another episode of Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law.